Hi, good evening. This is Arindam Lahiri back here once again with our agenda for the day being the paper 2 for CTET with a special focus on the math section. And I hope those of you who attended the earlier session on paper 1 did find it useful enough, and please keep writing back to us so that and giving us the feedback so that we know how is it going and what else are some of the stuff that you would want to know on the CTET exam as such on an overall basis. Great, so let's get started for today's session. Let me start by giving you an overview of the paper. This paper again has essentially 3 sections which are exactly the same as in the paper 1. The first section, the child development and pedagogy, 30 questions. Language 1, 30 questions, and language 2, 30 questions. In between, there are 2 other sections and you have to choose one of them and respond to 60 questions of that particular section. One is on the mathematics and science area, and the second section is on the social studies arena. So in terms of our focus for the day today, we'll focus on the math section, which essentially consists of 30 questions out of these 150 questions. As far as mathematics areas are concerned, please remember the difference between the paper 1 and the paper 2 is that in paper 2 you have 20 questions of content that's like actual questions from the 6th to the 8th grade, and 10 questions on pedagogical issues vis-a-vis what we saw last week in terms of the CTET paper 1, where there was equal distribution of content and pedagogical issues. So of course that means that you need to focus a little more on the content side as compared to the paper 1. A, it's more questions, and B, it is of a little higher grade of study that we're talking about. Therefore the questions tend to be comparatively more difficult than in paper 1. Though those of you who have done maths till the 12th grade obviously will find them fairly comfortable. The pedagogical issue related questions remain kind of same in talking about the same areas of focus, and we have exactly the same kind of stuff that we saw in the paper 1 as such. In terms of the content side of it, it's essentially similar content that's charted out in the syllabus. However, we will definitely see that there are some differences which we will talk about in the next few slides. We do have number system here, questions from number system, algebra, geometry. There's a lot of questions on around geometry that do come in. Data handling, graphical as well, okay, and mensuration, which talks about areas, volumes. It does talk about solid shapes as well. So there are stuff that you definitely need to revisit once you are into this particular section. However, if we move on, we must remember that we are here talking about MCQ questions where all choices except one are wrong, and framing the wrong choices takes just about a minute or even less than a minute at times. Three fundamental methods that I want to discuss. One is working with the choices, that is taking a cue from the choices and figuring out how to approach such a problem. By elimination, choice elimination, that's number two. And putting value from the choices, that is plugging in the values from the choices and checking out which is the one which kind of satisfies the question stem that is there essentially. Okay. So if we look at these three fundamental ways of approaching MCQs where the focus is on the choices, and just to repeat myself from the last week, we do have the choices here as additional parts of our question vis-a-vis if we look at the questions that are asked in the school system normally, which are like open-ended questions or open response question. I wouldn't say open-ended, but I would say open response questions. Working with choices, let us look at what is this question, which is going to get loaded on your screen in just a few seconds. I'll hang on till that time. Great. So the least number, which is a perfect square and is also divisible by 10, 12, 15, and 18. And you have the four choices, the 3600, 2500, 1600, and 900. Now if you look at this, one of the critical words, if I were to say so, for this particular question is the word least. The second element of this question is that it needs to be a perfect square. And the third element of this question is that it is divisible by four numbers. Now if I look at these answer options, I quickly can scan through and figure out that all of them are perfect squares. And I need to find out the least number, which is also divisible by 10, 12, 15, and 18. Now, if I look at these choices, my least number is 900, and hence I must examine this answer option first. Is it divisible by 10? Yes, it is. Is it divisible by 12? Yes, it is. Is it divisible by 15? Again, yes. Is it divisible by 18? Again, yes. So it satisfies all the conditions. So it's the least number among all the choices. It's a perfect square, 30 square. And it is divisible by 10, 12, 15, and 18. So here, we are anyway, by the way the question is worded, you've got to work with the choices, but you must know drop in my connection, and hope all of you are able to hear me, and I'll go ahead with this question again. So we are talking about here a question where we definitely need to work with the choices. And in terms of the choices, we distributed this question into three elements. One is that this has to be the least number, it has to be the perfect square, it has to be divisible by 10, 12, 15, and 18. So scanning through the answer options, we figured out that all the answer options were perfect squares. All four of them had double zeros at the end, and the other part themselves are also perfect squares, so definitely they're perfect squares. And they're also divisible by, looking at the least one, which is 900, that is divisible by 10, 12, 15, and 18. We checked with each one of them and we got an answer that yes, it's divisible by all of them, and hence that being the correct answer. So let's move on to the next question, where we need to look at using our method of elimination. Okay, and these kind of questions sometimes are a little tricky because it has this word called that which of the following statements is not okay. So you have to be careful that it's not true. Which one is not true? Okay, under root 64 is equal to 8. This is true. 0.4 under root is not really 0.2, is it? Because 0.2 square is equal to 0.04, so which is different from 0.4. So I hope you understand that this is not true, and hence we've already got our answer. So we try to eliminate. So while you are doing the elimination, you could start either from the top or from the bottom. Either way is fine. There is no hard and fast rule on that. If you're lucky enough, you might need to do only one or two options. If you're not really lucky enough, you might need to do all the four options, eliminate all the three options, and therefore the fourth one must be the correct. So, I mean, even if it is so, I think it's worth it because, again, elimination is very critical. Now, some of the questions that I'm using here are definitely some of the questions that will need this kind of a methodology. There really isn't any other methodology. But however, there are other questions where you could use it, though they might have other methods to approach, and it's a question of whether you're comfortable with that or not. Okay, and let me assure you, while you're attempting multiple choice questions, these techniques are fairly common. It's not anything any out of the world stuff that I'm sharing with you. It's only just bringing your focus back to what works. So let's move to our third methodology, and we're going to talk about here putting value from the choices. Okay, So we have this figure here, and you can realize from the figure that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all angles which together make up 360 degrees. Now, one way is to assume that they're equal. 2, 3, 4 are equal, so one of them could be a variable, and then one is some variable. This question actually is a little, poorly framed. That additionally, then this question that you, so any of these answer choices could be correct. So if you look at number 5, it's 150 degrees, and number 1 angle is given out, so it's 100. So if you add the two together with the answer choice 1, then what you have is that these together make 250 degrees, which means left with is so if it is 250 degrees, then the balance is 110 degree, which is not exactly divisible by 3. Similarly, if you add 120 to this 150, what you get here is 260, 100 degree value. You get 27. If you subtract, you have an answer to that extent. If these angles do not have a fractional fractional degree angles. Okay. So again, you've got the answer choice in the second option. The correct answer option in the second option may not necessarily happen, but please remember CTET questions per se are not so difficult. It's time frame that one would need to work in order to be able to clear the paper with 60% marks. And of course, just as an aside, I'm sure you must be reading this. There is a proposal being moved by the Ministry of HRD to increase the duration of the examination of each paper by 60 minutes, and if that happens, then of course you've got actually 1 minute to do a question, and therefore you could even end up doing questions which take up to about 75, 80, 90 seconds, some of the questions, because you need to do only 60% correct. My guess is that if they actually increase probably the timeline, they might also want to introduce negative marking, which may not necessarily be a good news. Anyway, so we'll wait for their formal notification. At this point in time, let's focus on reviewing the math section. Okay, so we've got a quick poll. and I'm going to launch this poll. You can read it off the screen already, but I am launching a poll. You can put in your responses, and you've got 40 seconds to work. I'm waiting for people to vote. Waiting for some more people to vote. Quick one. We've got fairly split answers. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So let's close this poll, and let me share again the poll results. We've got some responses on the first option, and of course most of the responses on the correct option. So let's go back to the screen. We have the value of A and B here, and if you look at the expression, you've got AB and you've got A squared. So A squared is 25 and AB is minus 15. So if you just quickly put those values up here, I think it's not difficult to note that you've got a 25 here and you've got a minus 15 here, and outside you have a minus AB, which of course when it is minus 15, then it will add up to 15. So it's definitely, you know, larger than 15, and quite a lot, because you have 25 minus 15, which is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13. 13, 2 times 13 is 26. So you've got this part simplified further into 26, and then you add 15 to it, and you've got 41. Okay, the correct response. Pretty good. Those of you who have already done this, very good. Wonderful. Some early warning on the math portion. If you look at the syllabus on the site, there isn't a specific mention of statistics, specifically 4 terms that we've seen coming in some of the papers repeatedly. It's mean, median, mode, and range. Very, very basic understanding of the same. Okay. However, it does need, so you shouldn't be surprised to see a question from this topic in the math section of paper 2. You could also have a very basic question on probability that has appeared in the past in these in this section. And some of these might, if you're not if you've not heard this before, if you've not analyzed this before, might come as a big surprise. Okay, so let's look at a kind of a question that is asked in probability. A pretty straightforward question actually is from the first principle. There's a very classical definition of probability that it asks. So it says a large basket of fruits contains 3 oranges, 2 apples, 5 bananas. If a piece of fruit is chosen at random, what is the probability of getting an orange or a banana? So an orange or a banana means orange and banana has to be added together. So you've got 8 possible fruits to choose from out of a total of 10 fruits. So you've got 8 upon 10, which is 4 upon 5, which is the probability of getting an orange or a banana. So not very difficult for people who are aware of probability as a concept, but if one is not used to doing these kind of questions in the recent past, then one could get surprised, especially because there is no mention of this as a topic in the math content section. Moving on to a question on statistics. Again, you'll notice that it's a very simple question. It's not a very difficult question. It talks about just finding out mode and median of a simple data set, which you need to obviously arrange in ascending order in order to find out the median and the mode as well. So if you look at this, scan through this data very quickly, you can see that 13 is the data for mode that appears the maximum number of times, which is 3 times. And then if you arrange them in the order, you've got 2 11s, 2 12s, and then comes 3 13, and then you have a 15 and an 18. So there are 9 data points, and therefore the middlemost one, that is the 5th one, is again 13. And therefore if you add the mode 13 to the median 13, you've got their sum to be equal to 26. Again, not very difficult for people who are aware of these terms, but people who are not aware of this term, it makes great sense to kind of go through the NCERT textbook, relevant NCERT textbook, in order to get a very basic refresh of the concepts that you might have already studied in the past. Let us look at another poll question, simple poll question on time, speed and distance, and here it goes. So the poll's activated. Kindly plug in your responses, and 40 to 50 seconds. No need to hurry, but need to be accurate. Okay, waiting for responses. 50 seconds up. Looking for some more responses on the poll question. Great. Most of you have done it correctly. A few having a problem. I'm closing the poll right now, and let me share the responses. Okay, so let's go back to the screen again, and let me also explain the question a little bit. If you look at this question, and the screen's still loading, so I'll just hang on for a second here. Okay, great. Now if you look at this, car covers the distance x in so many hours, distance covered by the car in 1.2 hours is, etc. Okay, now I'm sure all of you have done the calculation, so I'm not getting into the calculation per se, but maybe, you know, if you are more comfortable with numbers, you may not necessarily need to do all the calculation because you can play with the choices again here. So you've got here 178.2 kilometers covered in 4.4 hours. So dividing the same, you've got 44 into 4, which is 176, and remainder is 22. Hence, if you divide it fully, it's going to be 40.5 kilometer that the car travels in 1 hour. So if you're talking about 1.2 hours, it's one hour, and then 1/5 of that. Hence, the last digit here will necessarily have a 0.1 at the end, whatever the first the integer part is. Now if you look at these 0.5 and 0.1, there is only one option which has got a 0.6 as the last digit, and therefore, you know, without actually adding up all of that, trying to see if it is 48, etc., so on, which you can do, but if you are comfortable with working with numbers like this, you can actually shorten your time by a few seconds, and all that we're talking about here is shaving off a few seconds. Okay, so hope this is pretty clear, and at this point let me check, maybe I can go to someone and okay, Sanghamitra, if you're there, I'm giving you the speaking rights, and you could share if you are following the session fine. Is there anything else that I need to do here? Okay, over to you, Sanghamitra.
Hello, sir.
Sorry, Sanghamitra, go ahead.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, sir. Good evening. Sir? Yeah, it's very interesting and very knowledgeable thing, but I have tried my best to answer the questions, but I need more counting. eroding the road. What I mean to say, I need more guidance to at least to crack the exam. I need more suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thanks, Sangamitra. I could not catch all the words. Hope if you can just put me in a chat the text of your message, it will be better. Somewhere technology challenges still remain at times, and I hope we can have a better conversation the next time we are able to speak. Okay, let's move on. So there's another poll coming in, number 3, and let me show it on your screen. Geometry 1 here. Looking forward to your responses on this one. I think it's doable much faster than the usual questions. Not too much. Yeah, great. Some responses already kicking in less than 20 seconds. Pretty good. Waiting for others. Great. Going forward. Okay. Pretty good. Very good responses, but quite a divided response actually. Okay, so let me just close it right now and share the response graph. So as you can see, it's a little divided house here. Interesting thoughts. I'm sure you know we would do well to kind of take this up for discussion. So let me just close this, go back to my site. Once I have the slide, it will be easier to work. Okay, sounds good. Prakash got a message about you not being clear about the probability question. I'll come back to this, okay, after I finish this particular question. Okay, let's look at this question, all of you. We're talking about two triangles, A, B, and C. Okay, just pardon my drawing here, drawing with the mouse, not necessarily the best response all the time, but I'm sure it's legible. So we've got A, we've got a B here, which is the 90 degrees, and we've got a C here. Okay, then we have a D here, E, which is a 90 degree, and finally we have a F. So we've got this 90 degrees as equal, and what else do we have? We've got AB equals EF, and BC equals DE. Okay. Therefore, if you look at RHS, as some of you have mark this as the correct option. What does RHS stand for? RHS stands for right angle, hypotenuse, and side. So we've got a right angle here, B. Hypotenuse is AC or DF, which is not part of the congruency condition. And then we have one of the sides, which is one of them is anyway there. So essentially, you know, those of you who have gone with the traditional one, which says it's a side angle side, included angle, we've got a correct answer there. So those of you who made this mistake probably jumped the gun in terms of looking at the 90 degrees and not being careful about the fact whether we have a hypotenuse or not. So such questions might seem a little easy, which is why I was saying that, you know, you would probably do it fast. But if you are a little confused, best thing is to draw and make sure that you're not sacrificing accuracy here for speed. Pretty good. So at this point, let me just go back to the probability question once more, because there's a request from Prakash that he's not very clear about the probability question. Okay. Especially for you, Prakash, and for others, if there are others who have not followed this question at that point in time. We're talking about what is the probability of getting an orange and a banana. Now the classical definition of probability of any particular event happening is basically the ratio of the number of favorable events, okay, upon the total number of events. So we're talking about the total number of fruits that this guy can pick up from the basket is how much? 10, 5 plus 3 plus 2. And the one which is favorable, the number of fruits that are favorable, if you're trying to find out the probability of getting an orange and a banana, is actually 8, because you've got 3 oranges plus 5 bananas. So if you get that, then you know that your correct response is 4 upon 5. So I'll wait for a minute for you, Prakash, to let me know if it is clear at this point in time. Okay, anyway, so we'll get back once again towards the end of the session if there are any particular questions that any one of you is not very clear. And let's move on to our next question. There are a few questions which will be definitely logic based, and interesting question that I saw was this one, one of the interesting ones. How many times will I be writing 2 if I wrote down numbers from 11 to 199? And the answer choices are pretty close. So you have to actually find it out correctly. Anyone who would like to attempt this question and then kind of explain? If you want to explain, you could raise your hand, and I'll be happy to share the speaking rights with you, and you could explain if you want to. I'll wait for a few minutes, a minute or so, and if I don't have a volunteer, then maybe I'll myself be doing the explanation. Okay, since we don't necessarily have a volunteer, let's go ahead with this question. So let's go ahead, trying to decode this particular problem. And one of the, easiest ways, I would say, even if it seems a little time consuming, would be to actually count down the numbers without trying to put any formula or anything on this, So the first things first, when I start with 11, I have a count of 1, 2 that I'll write for 12. Next, I have for the 20s range, I have 10 times 2, right? No, it's 11 times 2 because 22 has 2 of the 2's. So I've done till 29. Now let me check. I have got in 30s I've got 1, 2, 40s 1, 2, 50s 1, 2, 60s 1, 70s 1, 80s 1, 90s 1. Okay. 102 again, then you have 112 again. So you've got 9 2's again here, which you have for every 10 numbers you've got a 1 2. So that's it. Next comes 120 series, where you've again got 11 2's just like the first one, and then you have the 130s. So you've got 1 2 for 132, 42, 52, 62, 72, 82, 92. Again 7 2's right now. So all of this added together, you've got 22 plus 16, that is 38. Now, the normal mistake is to mark 36 here, because you you tend to forget the 2 times 2's that are written on 22's, and you've got 2 of them. One as 22 itself, and the second one is 122. If you've got 100 and 222 in the next one, please remember you have to take 3 2's. So it's only saying how many times will I be writing 2. Okay. So this is pretty much a logic base. You know, the logic that I'm using is that there is a cluster of 2's in the 20s series, and I've got 2 of them, one in the 2-digit numbers, one's in the 3-digit numbers for the hundreds series, and then I've got a 2 for every 10 numbers. So that's all I need to count. Okay, I hope this has been clear. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Again, a logic-based question. Seems a little complicated, but it isn't. And I'll leave you for a minute to kind of read this question and attempt to approach this question. Any takers for this question? I'll be very happy to take. Okay, I do see your hand going up. Banu, raise your hand. I'm giving you the speaking rights. So if you have a response to this, please go ahead, explain. Okay, I guess Banu actually pulled down his hand. So okay, so let's focus on the question at hand here in terms of the logic-based question. And important part to understand is that this is a little symbol-based question, and if you've got 2 symbols, the meaning of which you must be very clear. Triangle, a digit inside a triangle means it's the digit plus 4, and a digit inside the square means it's the square of the digit. So let's look at the expression first, the simple one first. 2 inside a triangle means 6 because it's 2 plus 4. 3 similarly means inside a triangle means 3 plus 4. So 3 plus 4 within a box means 7 square, which is 49, and hence we have the first one decoded as 49. So we've got 49 plus 6 minus inside the box 4, inside the square 4, so it's 16, and then the 16 is inside the triangle, therefore it's 16 plus 4, which is 20. 55 minus 20, and we've got a 35 here. Now these kind of questions are completely commonsensical to that extent, okay, and which is why we call it as logic-based questions. But one needs to be very clear in terms of approaching these questions. The first thing you need to do is that you've read and understood the question well. If you have not read the question well, if you have missed out on a certain part, chances are that you will not get the question, the correct response to this question. Okay. So it's very important that you must comprehend the question very well. You know, the language has to be understood, and it's critical for such questions, even more critical for such questions actually. One example of a graphical data handling kind of a question, pretty straightforward questions come. It says, according to the given graph, between which two consecutive months was the change in the auto sales the greatest? Okay, so it just talks about the greatest value, and you can see here that you've got a you know, jump from 3.5 to 4.25, which is 0.75. Then you've got a 0.5, etc. And then you've got a jump downwards from 4.75 to 3.75, which has got a 1 jump, jump of 1 million rupees. Okay. And therefore, the change, you know, the important word was that it's a change in the auto sales, the greatest, and it doesn't talk about necessarily the increase in auto sales the greatest. Okay. Now, if the same question was to have read increase in auto sales the greatest, the correct response would have been in February and March. But here we're going to talk about April to May, because it's got a dip of 1 million rupees. So that change is the highest in terms of the value. So again, important to read the question correctly and understand the question before attempting to answer this question. Let's activate the next poll. And you've got it on your screen now. Seems to be a question which needs some bit of calculation. Got some response coming in about a minute. Waiting for others to respond. Some more response, please. Seems to be a difficult one. Speed of response is slow. I'll give you another 20 seconds. Divided response, but not everyone's responding on this case. Okay, let me close this and let me just let me just go back to the screen actually very quickly. Okay, so we're back on the screen. Now, I'm sure you realize that this question was a little time consuming. You couldn't have anyway done it probably in less than 10 minutes, less than a minute. Okay, now if you look at the cylindrical jar, you're talking about the diameter being increased by 25%. Okay, so if I look at the volume of a cylindrical jar, it's pi r square h. Now our diameter is increasing by 25%, so r again must be increasing by 25%. So one level of confusion is that is it the diameter, is it the radius, what is increasing? So let's say if I have my diameter as 100, okay, then my radius will be 50. So if my is into 125, so half of that must be my radius, which is 62.5, and 62.5 on 50 is nothing but again 25%. So as long as percentage is concerned, the diameter change means also the radius change, because they're by 25%. So which means that if my original diameter was r, the change diameter will be 5 by 4 times r. Okay, so which means this must be squared, and we've got to multiply this by the new height, which is, let's say, h dash. So in order that the volume is unchanged, h dash must be equal to 16 by 25 of h dash, sorry, h, because you got to multiply it by the new height must be 16 upon 25 times the old height. So you know that this is going to decrease, that means this is a decreased one. And how much is the decrease? H minus this. So what is the percentage decrease? This upon H. So the whole thing is 9 upon 25, which is nothing but 36%. So those of you who've actually marked 36% is fairly right. Now, some of you, many of you have also marked a 10%. I don't know where does it come from, but logically speaking, if the radius or the diameter of the cylinder, which has got a r square impact on the volume, that is 2 times impact on the volume, and that is increased by 25%, common sense tells me that the height must be decreased by more than 25% in order to compensate for that increase. Okay. So, and you know, if it were not a volume, but let's say pi RH, I don't know what that quantity is, but if it had been pi RH and R had been increased by 25%, it would have been 5 by 4 R, and then H should have become 4 by 5 H, and that's equal to 20%. So a 25% increase must be compensated by a 20% decrease in the height, which gives you the same volume, you know, or the same product. Essentially, we're talking about the product here of 2 variables. So yes, it's a little difficult question from a perspective that it's not easy to work it out. Okay, and so there are some questions which might also have a look that this is time consuming. This is one of those kind of questions, you know, it looks like, you know, I have to check all 4 and see which one is the correct answer, what if it is the last one. So sometimes I skip those questions, you know, as an examinee, as a person writing the test. I may have an intent to skip such kind of a question, because the whole reading of the whole question is going to take me about, if nothing else, 15-20 seconds. Understanding it, my 36 seconds are gone, you know. So how do I do it? But if you look at this question, you know, it's so simple, you know, it's so simple because it's the first option which is the correct one. So who's got the correct answer I need to find out. So if I'm looking at Seema, it's 4 plus 4, which is equal to 8, and that's correct. And then I forget about what is Anis, Asha, Tessie. So I don't really need to bother about it, because Seema has got the correct answer, and I know there's only one correct answer for this question. Okay. So, so be careful, you know, you might have actually skipped a question which is actually easy, and you thought it was time consuming and you went ahead. Okay. Let's look at another mensuration kind of a question. Sometimes these appear to be a little difficult. Let's go back and launch the poll. Looking for more responses. Shouldn't be that difficult, this one, as compared to the earlier one. 40 seconds up. More response. 60 seconds coming up. Very good. More responses dropping in. Keep it coming. So this is the one where we are getting all kinds of responses. Wonderful. That gives me more opportunity to discuss this. But yeah, please respond. Your responses will always be useful because it gives me more inputs in terms of discussing the question. Banu, if you're raising hand for a specific question, I would advise if you could send it by the chat at this point in time, because otherwise we might be overshooting the time much. Okay, so I'm closing the poll right now. Sharing it in. If you see the responses, you can see the responses. And let's go back to the slide. Okay. Actually, a fairly straightforward question of mensuration. We've got a square field whose area is 36 meters square, which means each side is 6 meters. Clear? And a rectangular lawn whose width is 2/3 of the side of the square field. So 2/3 means the width of this rectangular lawn therefore is 4 meters. And the rectangular lawn and the square field both have the same perimeter. So the square lawn has a perimeter which is equal to how much? 4 times 6, which is 24. And similarly, you will have the perimeter of the rectangular lawn, which will be also be 24, and one side is 4. So the other side must be equal to, that is the length of the rectangle must be equal to how much? 24 by 2, which is 12, because you know, it's 2 times length plus width. So it's 12, and 4 is the width, therefore length must be 8. And hence the area of the lawn, we are talking about the area, which is 32, 8 into 4. So those of you who marked 24, I'm sure you probably got confused with the perimeter of the lawn as 24. So again, it's important to note what is it that I'm trying to find out, and accordingly I need to respond to the correct answer. So again, you know, most of you have got this question wrong, though most of you should have got it actually right, you know. So I really don't know how did you get 64 as such, for those of you who got 64. But in case you share it on the chat or something, I can definitely look at that. Vanu, again, my request is that you are putting up a screen which we are very close to. In the meantime, if you have anything urgent, you could always send it in through a chat message. Let's go over to the next one. Let me skip this poll question right now because we're a little running short of time. Coming back to the other section, which is 10 questions, which is pedagogy questions, it's important to practice a few of the questions that are already there in the previous year's questions, and they are actually fairly commonsensical, but those of you who had the necessary background, I'm sure you can understand this application questions very well, In this question it says, which of the following questions are open-ended questions and can be used to enhance mathematical thinking? We're talking about an open-ended question and not an open response question. So the solution of 2x plus 4 is equal to 8 is a definitive answer. Okay. Real world problem for which this is a solution, it's fairly open-ended. Verify x is equal to 2 is a very specific instructional question. Plot the graph, again it's a graphical question. So if you look at the types of questions, it's useful to know what kind of question am I doing at this point in time, and that is going to be always useful while trying to attempt the pedagogy questions. Okay. Okay, so since we have about 10 minutes, let me just go back and launch the poll question, the last poll question, and then we can actually go towards the end of the session. The last poll question on your screen, and I'm sure this time you will definitely not make any mistake. Looking for more responses. It's a minute now, and it's a pretty straightforward question. Looking for more responses. Of course, most of you got this fairly right. So, yeah, it's more than a minute now. So I'm closing the poll. Incorrect. I'm sure this very clearly. I guess again experiencing some slow connection. Um, I'll wait for the screen to load. Okay, so we're back on the screen, and if you look at this particular question, you know, we're talking about radii of two circles, 8 and 6 centimeter. Some of you have done and added these two together, which is not what it is asking it to do. It's the radius of the circle having the area equal to the sum of the areas. Okay, so the area of the first triangle is 64 pi because it's pi r square, and you know, the other one is 36 pi. So if you add them up, it's going to give you 100 pi square, and hence the correct response answer should be 10 centimeter for the radius of the circle, which is area equal to the sum of the areas of these two given circles. So again, I think most of you got this correctly. Some of you have had a little problem, but I'm sure if you brush up your geography knowledge, you should be able to do that. Okay. In terms of the pedagogy question, I think some of you had a little doubt in your mind in terms of what is really the correct answer. The real world problem, word problem, if you were to frame using this, there could be many responses. You know, it's like asking write an essay on equations. You know, so it's almost like that. You know. So there's not going to be a very definitive answer, and there's going to be an open-ended question which can enhance mathematical thinking in terms of how can someone frame a word statement, a word problem statement that can actually lead to the equation being formed the way it is written. You know, so those of you who are using such techniques in the classroom will not find it difficult at all. In terms of attempting such questions. Last couple of slides before we end the session. If you're weak in math in this section, you could target 40 to 50%, 7 to 8 questions out of the content questions, 20 questions. You can still manage to get anywhere between 5 to 7 questions out of the 10 pedagogy questions very easily. If you're comfortable with math, you can target 70 to 80%. You can get 15 to 16 questions of the content questions. There could be a couple of them which may not strike you straight away, which you may want to leave it because it seems that there is a lot of calculation work, etc., to be done. So it might be useful actually to leave them rather than falling in love with those kind of questions. And then again, you can very easily do 6 to 8 pedagogy questions, even if you miss out on a few questions which you are not sure of the theory, etc. Very important to read is the position papers on the NCERT site, which you can download and read. There are white papers, position papers, etc. Those have a lot of questions. They have a lot of resources from which these pedagogy questions are actually asked. So stay focused. You can reach us at our site. You can email us at info@kalakendraindia.com. Connect us at the Facebook on ctet.net.inside. And of course, you can join the Beyond Teaching site. Typo error on the top of the site, sorry. It's CTET Paper II math discussion that was brought to you by Beyond Teaching in partnership with Kalakendra India. Any questions at this point in time? I'll be happy to take it up if there are any. Otherwise, I'll just keep these two slides moved up and down just for you to kind of note the details down.